Hello. It looks like my moderator is here. There she is. Hello. I can't hear you. Hello. Can people hear me? Can you give me a chat? Okay. Good. All right. Uh, so we're gonna get started then. Hi, my name is Alex Wong, and I'm the Senior Director of Business Information System here at YDF. And today I have no slide, not even a temporary prepared slide at all. This one will be a interesting one. So hopefully nothing's get in the way of, including my son, getting in the way. Um, no. Okay, sorry about that. So what is this session about? This session is about Power Automate tips and tricks, and I want to make it slightly different than hopefully slightly different than what you may anticipate. So this session is not going to tell you, okay, do this, do that. I recommend this. I recommend that. So this is going to be Austin is already saying it. It's a live demo. Yes, it is a live demo. So what this session is about is we're going to go into two scenarios. It's actually coming from community, and they need some help. And unfortunately, they could not attend the session directly. So is I think so. Is this being recorded? I think so. Every session is recorded, so it should be. So hopefully the recording, they will be able to watch it later. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go into two particular Power Automate scenarios on a real world application. And in the way of doing so, hopefully I'll be able to share some tips and tricks and how to, as well as let you see where we can potentially make things a little more efficient and how you handle some troubleshooting if things comes up that way. So without further ado, we have 45 minutes. I have two scenarios. Hopefully we can go through both of them rather quick, go through all of them as well as some questions for you, from you if there is. So let's start with, let me share my screen. Okay, this one. All right, my screen is shared. So basically, we have a particular scenario here in the community, and this particular business needs here is to look at a list of constituents, and then looking at the constituent prospect status, and excuse me, prospect status, and if the constituent's prospect status is empty, blank, doesn't have any, then compile that information into a single digest email that gets sent to somebody for them to go ahead and do something about it. So, meaning give them a prospect status, like, oh, go do something, give them a call. I don't know what are all the prospect status that this particular org is planning to do, but regardless, we're talking about gathering all those that doesn't have prospect status and emailing it out. That's the gist of it. So let's get into a little bit of a thinking process. There we go. So basically, the thinking process here is it's going to run however often. Let's say every day, every night, every few hours, every week, whatever the schedule may be. Then we're going to get a list of constituents. Maybe it's all constituent that has been last changed in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever that is, and then loop into every single constituent. Unfortunately, the prospect status is a piece of information that can be obtained only one constituent at a time instead of coming directly from the list of constituents. So we have to loop through every constituent and then make a call to get the status of the constituent, prospect status of the constituent. Then take a look at if the prospect status is empty, or in this case, in the get prospect status API call, if there is no prospect status, you actually get an error. So we'll talk about how we handle the error as well. And then basically, if there is no prospect status, we can add it to a an array of constituent that doesn't have status. And once we look through all the constituent, we're going to go ahead and check if there's anyone that is in, if there's any constituent in the array. If there is, we're going to send the email out with that in a HTML table. So that's the gist of it. Let's jump right into it. So here we add Power Automate, and I'm just going to go ahead and directly create a schedule Cloudflow. Actually, it's fine. I'll do the schedule Cloudflow BB Dev Day demo for Prospect Digest. Okay, so we're gonna do, let's just say every 1 day, and I'm just gonna go ahead and create that. As some of you already know, I do not like the new designer because it still has bug. I like the designer in some ways, so I'm not biased about new stuff. Love new things if it's good, but there are bugs and unknown bugs that is in the new designer, which driving me and many others away from using the new designer. So for now, I'm going to stick with the old designer. Here we just have a trigger, and that trigger is simply every single day we're going to run. And I'm not going to have a start time. All I'm going to do is I'm going to say the hours. Say it's 6 a.m. in the morning at minute 00. And of course, time zone, we're going to specify that. Otherwise, it's going to be just UTC, which is Universal Time. So I'm from Eastern Time, so I'm going to do Eastern Time. So this is the trigger. It's just going to run every single day in the morning at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. That's what it is. I'm not going to worry about that. Of course, when I test it, it's just going to run. So what we then want to do is, and also here, I'm not going to get into demoing error handling, which I have other session previously for that. I'm not going to get too much into that. So we're just going to get into the gist of the bare minimum to get it to work. So here we're going to go for Blackbaud constituent, because this is where the listing of constituent action is. So we can go into there and we're going to look for the constituent list. So we want a list of constituents. So there it is. Now, first of all, first thing I want to let you know about is every action in Power Automate has some particular settings that you may want to handle. So if you go into the 3 dots and go into settings, there are some settings here that you want to take a look. By default, we have a retry policy, which this retry policy is exponential, if you want to call it that, meaning it's going to retry 8 times, I believe, by default, and it's going to extend the number of minutes before retry. So I think the first time is like 2 minutes, 4, 8, 16, meaning before you really know there's a problem with your flow, it's already 20 minutes, 25 minutes into your thing because it's retrying that many times. So many times I don't like that, because if there's an error, I want it to retry if it's like a small error that resolve itself. But that's why I do want some retries. However, if it's something major and the first 2 retries fail, I want to know right away, which error handling that I'm not going to deal with right now. So generally, I will do retry a fixed interval, so it's not exponential. And I'm going to just retry 2 times. And PT20S simply means retry every 20 seconds. I'm going to retry twice every 20 seconds. If it fails, it fails, and the flow fails. Error handling happens if I have error handling in there, but that's what it is. Generally, I'll use that on any action that can potentially fail and requires some retry. So of course, actions such as setting a variable is generally never going to fail. So I wouldn't need to do anything with setting variables, for example. But list constituent calling an API will be something that likely can retry due to API limits and things like that. So hopefully that's a good tips for you to work on when you do your flow. Now, I have already pre-selected some constituent system IDs that I know some have prospect status, some don't. So I'm gonna just pop in there. There's like the 6 of them. So we're gonna look at these 6. Okay, so this is my list constituent step. Not much more to say about that. And then what we want to do is we wanted to check the prospect status of each of these constituents. There's two ways you can do that. One is you explicitly say that, hey, I'm going to go into and apply to each, meaning I'm going to create a loop that loops to every one of the constituent. And if you do that, you can go ahead and specify what am I looping. And for all Sky API lists, there is something called value, but you have to be careful and select the one that say the sets of items included in the response. Otherwise, you're getting the wrong thing. So sometimes, for example, if you get a list of custom fields, it will also have another value, which is the value of the custom field. That's not what you want. You want to get the value that say the set of items included in the response. So you can do that directly. And then we can go into getting the prospect status of the donor. So this is one way of doing so. Another way, which tends to be slightly easier for no coder, and that is you go straight into getting prospect status and let Flow do the apply to each for you. So that's what we're going to do here as well. So prospect, yep, that's the one. We're going to go ahead and get prospect status, get constituent prospect status. So here it requires the constituent ID. I'm going to look for that ID here. And we get list constituent, the system record ID of the constituent, pop that in, and Flow immediately put apply to each, because I'm going to look at each constituent this way. So if you mouse over, you'll see that this is the value that we're looking for too. It just automatically puts in without you dealing with it. Now, once we pop that into prospect status, we got to check the prospect status. But like I said, there is situation. I'm actually going to let you see that situation is probably best. Yes, let me do that. So let me save that and run it runtimes. A lot of time when you do Power Automate, you're going to run into, you will be creating some code, running it, creating some code, running it, because running it gives you some edge. Running it gives you what the expected output could be, right? So let's go back and actually do a test run of this. All right, so we got back our constituents, 6 of them. You can see apply to each is doing it to 6 of them. And I have get prospect status. Now, these are all constituent system ID that exist. So what that means is, this not found is not about not found of the constituent. It's not found as in there's no prospect status. So meaning we could potentially get output that is a status 404 not found. So we have to take that into consideration. And then we can see next one, same thing. We're getting a not found. Next one, not found. Hopefully not all of them is going to say not found. Otherwise, I'm going to pass out. Okay. Whew. I have one that is not a not found. Okay, good. So for one that is not a not found, you will see that the status code is 200. Okay, and 200 instead of a 404 error. So from that perspective, we can go ahead and now condition on this piece of information. I'm going to pop this over so we can open this up. You can see this later as well. There in Chrome, different browsers have different functionality, but you can actually do this pretty view that actually makes the JSON more easier to see. So I'm going to put this here for now. So let's get back to our editing. Well, I may have to go a little faster. So what we then want to do is we want to have a condition. Yeah, spell the whole thing out while it was there. So we want to have a condition that basically say, okay, if it's a 404 error, if it's a 404 status code error, meaning that there is no prospect status. That's one. It has no prospect status. So that's the first thing that we want to get to. So, however, there's no status code in the dynamic content. It's not part of what flow give you? How can you get access to that? So what you need to do here is there's a couple of things you can do. You can parse JSON and all of that stuff, but I like to skip a step if I don't really need to. So basically, what you can do is go to expression. You can do a not trigger output. It's just the output of the action. Our action that I want the output of is get constituent prospect status. Let's put this over here for a second. Let me make sure I got that right. Yep, output. And just want to make sure we want the output of the action get constituent prospect status, which is get. All spaces will be replaced with a underscore. That's just how flow works. Get constituent prospect status. And then you want to put a question mark after that, square bracket, and single quote. And from there, the whole output of this is this whole thing. And what we want is the first level property called status code. So that's what we want to get here and put in status code between that two single quote. And because status code is actually an integer, not a string, enclosed it in double quote. So we basically say, okay, and that if it's equal to 404, it's going to know to compare an integer in this case. Then it's yes, meaning there's no prospect status. We want to do something with it. The other condition is that we'll add another row, and then we have this here where we'll copy the same thing. We want to see the status code if it's 200, which is when we actually able to get prospect status. It's the one that doesn't say not found, but it could be returning prospect status, but it's empty. That could be the case as well. So not only we have to check for the 200 status code, but you also need to check for if the actual status, prospect status, is null. No, don't want to type it in here. It's an expression called null to mean that it doesn't exist. Okay, so here I'm not going to explain too much into it. This is just how logic works here. I'm going to actually put these two in a group. And this is an AND condition, and this is an OR condition. Basically, I'm saying that if we have a 404, or if we have a 200 and status is missing, then it is part of the email that we want to send out. So now we can talk about what we do in here. So here, we will need to have a variable because we're going to add to it. So I'm going to go back to the top and initialize a variable called missing status. It's going to be naming your action. I'm not going to do a whole lot of that in this call, in this session here, because I think I'm going to run out of time. But generally, you want to make sure that you rename your action so that it makes sense. In this case, I'm initializing the variable for missing statuses. And when the condition is missing, I'm going to go ahead and append to the variable, array variable, missing status, an object, which begins and end with the curly braces. And I'm going to give it some information such as I don't want to use donor name, so I'm going to do REID, which is constituent ID. And the constituent ID is the lookup ID of the constituent is the constituent ID that you normally see. So you go ahead and put that in there in the wrong place, of course, in between the two double quotes. Okay. And should I add a little more? That's not going to be important. I don't want to put name because that's PII. Just so that we can show there's more than one piece of information, I'm just going to put, say, the system worker ID then. For additional formatting and stuff like that, I think Austin used have a community post about that, a different session that talks about how you can beautify the email, which I'm not going to worry about here in this call. So system record ID, which is just this ID here. So I'm just adding to the array of anyone, any constituent that meets the criteria of having missing prospect status. So it's going to loop through all of my constituents in the listing, which is 6 of them, and go through there. And it should have 5 by the end of the thing. By the end of the apply to each, I should have 5. However, we don't know that. If this normally runs, there may not be any constituent that have no prospect status. So we have to condition to say, do we want to send an email or not? And that's going to depend on if the length of my array variable. So again, I'm maybe going a little fast because of time, but anyway, I'm trying to help go through this. So the length of the array variable is greater than 0, meaning there is at least a record, constituent record, that has no prospect status. So now we can go into here. We can go ahead and create a HTML table out of the array. And I'm just going to put missing status directly in there. I'm not going to go into too much of the custom columning. I'm not going to worry about anything else such as styling, and put that in there. And we are going to then send an email. Send email. And I'm just going to send this to myself. And this may say like missing prospect status, do something. And I'm going to do HTML coding and pop that HTML here. Okay, so now we have the, this is the logic that we put in place when we initially started. This is what we want to do, check everyone, and then once we're done, we come out, we condition to say, again, I'm just going to rename this one, condition on if missing status, and then that's going to send the email. So of course, we always test, manual, saves, and we're going to go ahead and run the flow, hit OK, everything should work, cross my finger. Oh, actually, something is not going to work. I forgot to do something, which is good. A lot of time we'll know, okay, I'm going to step you through that. Remember how we were saying that this action can fail? In flow, in order for the next action to, by default, to execute, you have to be successful on the last operation. However, you can change that. In this case, we know that prospect status can fail with a 404. Then we want to make sure that this condition can run even if the get prospect status has failed. So we want to make sure that if it's successful or if it's failed, we still go into the condition to check the status code and everything like that. So hit OK. And now this condition is going to work regardless of if this failed. So again, save, manual, save, and run. Let me find my email somewhere. All right, so it finished it properly. And now I should get an email address. Okay, so this is the email I received, right? Missing prospect status, do something, right? We have the constituent ID, the system record ID. Of course, we should have name and blah, 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 but we're not. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, that shouldn't be the case. We should, well, actually, it should be the case. I'll tell you what I mean by that. So going back into here, remember how all 5 fail with a 404, which is fine. Let's go into the one that didn't fail, this one. It did return a prospect status. However, if you take a look, there is actually no status. This is actually my record. I'm going to show you my record. Let me go to RENXT. So I always use my record as something that is to test stuff. So I have added stuff, removed this stuff, and apparently even though I removed it, the prospect status, it still showed it. See how my again, this is the ID 458424, which is the one that we're looking at, 458424. You can see that I do not have a prospect status. So if I go into status, there is no status. However, because there is a date in there, at some point I put a status and I removed it, the call to get prospect status will still return the information instead of a 404. It found the prospect status record and gave the stop time and things like that, but it actually did not have a status property, which is the exact reason why, even though we look for the status code of 200, we are also looking for if the status is null. And in this case, all 6 records should be in the email, and that is the situation that we saw with this email. All these, the first 5 does not have prospect record at all. The last one, which is myself, has prospect record, but it does not have a prospect status. So this is how this flow can work. Another time, the hardest thing you're going to deal with in any of your flow that you automate is how you deal with like these one-to-many relationship, or if information is there or not. One tip that I say a lot, I tend to tell people is if you have a condition, your paper will come in handy. You will have to draw out and say, okay, what are the conditions I want to go down the yes path? What are the conditions I want to go down the no path? And really paint that out in your head, or paint it out in a paper, napkin, however you want to do this. And then it will work and flow. And then you're going to test and test. You have an error. You check out your output and work from there. And this will take care of what Chris was looking to do. Hopefully when he sees this video, he'll be able to complete his project and go from there. So with that said, let me just double check if there's any question before I hop on to the next one. I think there's no question, right? Oh, no question. Great. All right. So I'm just going to jump to the next one. Close that. And where did it go? Not that one. Where did it go? Sorry. Looking for this. Is not what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for. Okay, good. So the next one that we're going to touch on is from Susan, and she's also hitting into a situation where we're doing. She's doing a Microsoft form that handles uploading of files, and she was able to get it to work, and then somehow she did some changes, and she was not able to get the uploading to work again. And this is the second one that we're going to touch on. Hopefully that will drive some creativity for you as well on using Microsoft Form to do some uploading. I think her particular scenario is to upload some images to be approved, and then has something to do with gift in kind, something like that. But regardless, there's a lot of possibilities. So for example, before we jump into it, some example will be I use Microsoft Forms for someone to submit a pledge agreement, for example. They may have a signed pledge agreement with the donor, and then they fill out the form, submit the pledge agreement PDF as part of the request form, and then that piece of information is uploaded, go through an approval process, everything goes through, a pledge is created automatically in Razor's Edge system. Another scenario that is a very good use case for creating systemized pledges or any gift, so that there's no error, there's already approval, and the attachment of the agreement, for example, can be attached directly onto the gift record for bookkeeping and things like that. So there are very good scenario to use uploading for. So let's jump into it. We have 15 minutes. Ooh, I don't know if I can get to it. I'll try to be fast. Hopefully when you play back the video, you'll just slow it down by a notch and you can hear me still. So we have a form. a quick form that is simply just 3 questions, right? We'll get through as much as we can. So first is a single upload. You can configure to only allow uploading of one file, and it's a required field. And then I have a second question. This is not meant to be required. So for example, we can have a second single upload, one file only, that is optional. So there is not required for them to upload. How do we handle that? And then we have a third one that is a multi-upload, a multiple upload that allows, let's say, up to 2 files to be uploaded. How do you process that? Okay, so I have also some limitation as to, okay, I want images, I want PDF, I want Word or Excel, and then go from there. So what do? We have to create a Power Automate that is triggered when a form like this is submitted. So again, we go into Power Automate. Where was my Power Automate? Here. Let's come back to this. Okay. My flows. Go ahead and create a new flow. You can start out with the template. There are templates for form. However, I generally don't like to use those because it has some extra action that doesn't exactly fit what I wanted to do. So I just don't use it. So I can just go ahead and start out with a instant cloud flow. I'm going to say that when a form is submitted, but I'm just going to jump right into it and add the trigger later. You don't have to select the trigger right away. So you can go into it and then go from there. So I'm just going to call this one BB Day form, MS form upload. Okay. So what we want is to have a trigger for when a form is submitted. Okay. Now, when you're here, you get to select, you actually do not see the form. You cannot see the form here because it only loads the form that's personal to you as the user here on Power Automate, which is Alex Wong myself. All my forms are created as a group form because I don't want forms that belongs to me. It belongs to the organization. I have a group, Office 365 group just for that, which is called Business Automation. So how do I get in here? You have to use custom value and go to the form. And in your URL, you'll be able to find the form ID. So here, where it say ID equals, that's your form ID. So you want to take that, copy, and go to your flow and put that in. We're going to add a step. The next step is always going to be from form, and that'll be the get response detail. That get response detail is going to require you to, again, put in the form ID. Again, you'll enter a custom value, which is what you copied. And you want the response ID that will come from the trigger output. So you're just going to put that in. Now we have the basic set done. So let's just save it first. Always good to save it first. I need to plan my thing. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, where was I? Okay. So now you have gotten the form response. If you go ahead and get some, let's say we're going to put a compose action. I like compose action because you can just kind of like do whatever and see what dynamic contents are there, things like that. But I'll get rid of it afterward usually. So here, if you look at the dynamic content, you can see the various different responses, right? So you have the single upload file optional, single upload file required, multiple upload file optional. So if it's a required field, then we know that coming into the flow that this is going to have information. This will have information. So what kind of information? It's a lot of information when it's come to a file. It has like where it was uploaded, the ID of the file, the name of the file. So actually it's a lot of details. So what you need to do is you actually have to use something called a parse JSON action. So go ahead and add a parse JSON action. There you go. So it is in the data operation. Microsoft is slow today, eh? Okay, parse JSON. So the content is going to be the response to the question. So in this case, we know the required single file, and we need the schema. So where do we get the schema? We don't know what the schema is. So the schema is always the same, by the way. So for an uploaded file, so I have something that I can always copy from and put it in. Okay, this is it. However, what do you do when you don't have that? Pretty easy. So I'm going to save this and actually do a run. I'm going to submit something here so you can see. Okay, saving. There we go. So I'm going to test a run. And it's waiting for me to submit. So I'm going to preview, upload a file. This is looking for image. I'm going to test my image. And these two are both optional. I'm not going to worry about them. And I'm going to hit submit. Wait, oh, this should have been I didn't change it, but I will upload one anyway. All right, upload, and now I can submit. So once that is submitted, my flow is running. That's a test. And you can see that the response are here, right? Yeah, these are gibberish to you. To flow and know what this is, I would actually like it if they actually tells you what the question is that this response is for. Unfortunately, you don't get that kind of information. So what we can do here is we can go ahead and take that information, whichever one, actually doesn't matter, copy this whole thing. And then when we go back to our editing, we know this output is a JSON and we copied it. We can generate from sample and put that in here. And I think I might have copied an extra something incorrectly somewhere. So anyway, this is generally what you'll do. I don't know what I copied incorrectly, but once you pop it in, hit OK, it's going to generate the schema for you. I'm not going to troubleshoot that right now because we were kind of running out of time. So when you do this, you'll get, again, I'm going to go into compose so I can see what dynamic content we have. So I know I'm pausing the single upload that is required. So I want to name this pause JSON of file upload for single file required. Again, because we're going to do this for multiple, you got to name them properly. So here I know that for this, I have more information, right? I have the size of the file. I have the upload status, the drive ID. All of this information is good for you to, and the name, good for you to then process it down the road. Now, one thing you'll notice is that when you pause, this is actually in an array. Even though my question was a single file upload, the problem with that is from flow perspective, it always comes in as an array, assuming that it could potentially be more than one file. So it's always going to be an array. So for example, if I wanted to get the name of the file, it'll automatically put that into and apply to each, looping for each file that is uploaded. However, you know that you have only one file to work with. So there's a couple of neat little trick you can do here is you can go ahead and create another. You could actually do it in one step, but then I'm going to do them in two. So you can do another pause JSON. This time, what I wanted to do here is I wanted to get the first file. I only want one. The first file in the body of my pause JSON for that single file. Okay, so now I'm only going to look at the first, which is the only. I know it's only because I configured the form this way. And what is the schema? Again, the schema is going to be the information that was provided here. But instead of being an array, it's just going to be the object. Okay, so that's this here. I'll take this whole thing. And that will be my schema, which is basically just an object of all these information. Now, coming back to my piece of information for the name, I'm going to move that outside of my apply to each, delete that. Now, if I were to want the name of my file, I'm going to go again. I'll rename this so you can see it clearly. I'm going to say pause JSON of first uploaded file of single file required. Okay, so now this is the action and I want the name. See how it's not putting this compose into an apply to each anymore. So now I can work on I can work on the single file, the first file, without having worry about flow putting my action into an apply to each, which generally complicate things, right? So now deleting that from her original post, what she wanted to do is she wanted to create a share link because an uploaded file goes to a SharePoint location, OneDrive or the group, depending on if the form is an individual or group form. So whoever that needs to see that file is likely not going to have permission to see the file. So we can have that action to create share link, and she was trying to do that, so we're going to do that. So new step, we're going to create a share link, and that's going to be from SharePoint. Create share link for file or folder. Okay, so here we're gonna, of course, I know where I uploaded my stuff, which is in business automation. The library is the document library. Item ID is going to be my ID. This is the file ID. Okay, and I am choosing from what? I'm choosing from the parse.json of the first uploaded. If I were to choose this ID, again, my share link will be thrown into the apply to each, and we want to avoid that. So you can go ahead and select this, and now this action will not be thrown into an apply to each. So now we're going to go ahead and say the link type is going to be for view only, for example. Depends on, of course, the business needs. And the scope is going to be for anyone with the link or people in your organization. You can then choose. I'm just going to say anyone with the link. That's fine. And then with this action, she'll be able to do an approval and put the link. So let's say, for example, approval workflow, and start and wait for an approval. And this is a yes, single approval for custom first response, and waiting for it. And then I can go ahead and put the shared item link in here, share link, and say uploaded image, and any other details I want. And this will just work for the purpose of what she needs to do. I'm not going to go too much deeper into the rest of the approval, how you deal with approval. That's not what this session is about. We have 2 more minutes left. So hopefully with these 2 examples, the 2 community person can watch the video and do what they need to do. What she was stuck on is actually the whole apply to each in this creating share link. So hopefully this part she can take care of, and then she can deal with the rest of her flow from there. And hopefully you learned something from me today from this session. And again, don't be afraid to go try it. And when you're trying, run it. Of course, you don't want to try with your real donors. Like in the case of the prospect situation, you want to try with like sample test record, like your staff records and you yourself, and go play away. I do mean play, because to me, this is quite a play. You play, you fail, you continue playing, and then you eventually succeed and win. So let me see if there's any question. When you say that JSON is always the same, do you mean for a MS form? So for a Microsoft form upload, file upload, the schema is always the same. So if you see her community post, I believe I put in the JSON here. So this is the schema for the single. And I believe, I don't think I have the away. The normal away one, I think there's another community post that has it. So any Microsoft form file upload will have the same exact schema for the JSON. So you can always use the same and not worry about copying and then using sample data to generate the schema. So it's always going to be the same. To confirm, The share item link was using the ID from, yes, the ID field is the ID of the file, and that's what you use to create the share link with. Okay, so that's all the questions. Hope this is useful for you, and thank you for watching.
Thanks so much, Alex, for doing this for us today. I launched the survey for everyone in the chat. If you could complete that, that would be great. And we look forward to seeing you at more BB Dev Days sessions later on.
Take care all. Have a good one.